They thought walking away would break you, that turning their back would leave you in pieces. They smiled as they left, thinking they had the final word, but they never saw what was coming next. What they didn't realize was that the moment they lost access to you, they also lost something far more valuable: your protection. The mask they wore began to crack. The illusion they built around themselves shattered, and life, with all its silent cruelty, began to keep score. You didn't scream. You didn't beg. You didn't even explain. You just vanished and quietly rebuilt everything they tried to destroy. And now, you've become everything they swore you couldn't be. Unshakable, untouchable, unreachable. So today, let's talk about what really happens when someone betrays a good person and how life, in its own time, delivers a lesson far more powerful than revenge. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a journey of transformation. Welcome to Stoic Capsule. Let's begin. People who betray you rarely look back. They walk away assuming they've won, believing you're left behind, shattered, confused, defeated. But what they can't see is the storm they've quietly ignited inside you. Not a storm of chaos or rage, but one of silent power. It builds slowly, quietly, until it becomes something else entirely: strength. You see, betrayal doesn't just hurt. It rewires you. And the first cut, it almost always comes from someone you trusted the most. The deepest wounds aren't inflicted by enemies. They come from those you once held close, from those who cradled your trust like something sacred, only to drop it without hesitation. That's what makes betrayal so devastating. It's not just about what they did. It's about what they made you question: your love, your loyalty, your worth, even your ability to judge character. You sit there in silence thinking, how didn't I see it? Was I blind? Did I deserve this? But the truth is, you weren't naive. You were real. You didn't fail, they did. They failed to respect the sacred space you gave them. They failed to meet your loyalty with their own. And this is where Stoicism begins to speak. Because pain, as the Stoics understood, is the first and greatest teacher. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." In other words, the betrayal isn't what defines you, how you process it does. You can let it break you, or you can let it build you. Deeper, wiser, sharper, quieter. That's what the Stoics did. They didn't chase revenge. They didn't seek closure. They transformed their wounds into armor. They forged a new self, one that could never be touched in the same way again. And maybe this story sounds familiar. Maybe it's yours too. You gave everything. Your time, your honesty, your energy. And one day they vanished, or worse, turned on you. They rewrote the narrative, and in their version, you became the villain. Suddenly, people you once called friends vanished too. No explanation, no chance to speak your truth. Just silence. Cold, calculated silence. You stared at your phone, waiting for anyone to ask what happened. No one did. And so you sat, not just in the ruins of the relationship, but in the ashes of the illusion. The illusion that love always protects, that loyalty is always mutual, that good people don't get hurt, But what they never expected was this. They thought you'd chase. They thought you'd beg. They thought you'd drown in your sorrow. They were wrong. But what they never expected was that you'd rise in silence. They thought you'd fall apart. But instead, you vanished, not out of bitterness, but from crystal clear clarity. Not out of anger, but from deep self-respect. You didn't go silent to punish them. You did it to protect yourself. They never saw it coming that you'd use the pain as fuel, that you'd turn silence into strength, and that your return wouldn't be to them but to yourself. Because your true power, it was never in your reaction. It was in your restraint. In Stoic philosophy, the highest virtue isn't brute strength, it's self-mastery. And when someone betrays you, the greatest form of power isn't found in vengeance. It's in the quiet act of choosing not to retaliate. You didn't lash out. You didn't take it public. You didn't post angry rants or try to expose them. Instead, you sat with your pain. You let it burn through you, and then you let it transform you. That's the kind of pain they never notice. The pain that doesn't scream but sculpts. The pain that becomes presence. That becomes purpose. And here's the twist: that pain, it was necessary. Yes, you heard that right. If they hadn't betrayed you, you might still be explaining yourself, still bending backwards to keep the peace, still shrinking just to make them feel tall, still pouring everything into someone who was quietly draining you. Their betrayal was a blade, but it didn't destroy you. It cut the cord that had been choking your growth. So don't regret it. Don't wish the pain away. Honor it, because that pain wasn't the end. It was the beginning of your rebirth. Let's get one thing clear right now. Their betrayal wasn't your fault. It wasn't because you were too much. And it sure as hell wasn't because you weren't enough. It was because they couldn't handle the light you brought into the room. People don't always betray you because you failed them. Sometimes they betray you because you stop being easy to control. Let's talk about the psychology behind betrayal. It doesn't always come from hate. More often it comes from fear. Fear of your growth. Fear of your evolving standards. Fear of your stability. The truth is, some people are addicted to chaos. They live for drama, for manipulation, for codependency. So when they see you thinking for yourself, speaking for yourself, setting boundaries, they panic. You become unfamiliar. You become a mirror reflecting all the parts of themselves they're not ready to face. And rather than face that truth, they run, they sabotage, they betray. It was never about your identity. It was always about their insecurity. Remember this. Someone else's disloyalty is a reflection of their character, not a referendum on your worth. Let's say you were loyal, kind, generous, supportive. You showed up. You stayed when others left. You gave second chances, even when you had every reason not to, and still, they betrayed you. It's easy to internalize that, to ask yourself, maybe I'm the problem, maybe I care too much. But no, you cared correctly. They just didn't have the emotional capacity to recognize it. You were real in a world that rewards the fake. You were stable in a world that thrives on chaos. You were consistent, and that terrified someone whose life was built on inconsistency. Here's a real example. A friend who couldn't celebrate you. You grew up together. You shared struggles, tears, late-night talks. You had each other's backs, but then you started to grow, to change, to level up. Your vision got clearer. Your choices became healthier. You stopped gossiping. You stopped entertaining the same emotional drama loops, and slowly, they began to pull away. Why? Because your evolution made them feel like they were being left behind. It wasn't that you made them feel small. It's that they refused to grow alongside you. One day, they ghosted you, or they started whispering behind your back. Maybe they even claimed you changed, like you'd somehow lost your way. But the truth? They were envious. Not of your ego, but of your evolution. They didn't betray you because you were wrong. They betrayed you because they couldn't control who you were becoming. From a Stoic point of view, don't take it personally, but do take it seriously. Epictetus once said, when someone acts badly, it's because they have judged it to be right. In other words, people often betray not out of cruelty, but because they've convinced themselves their actions are justified. Maybe they thought, they're too good for me now. I'll hurt them before they outgrow me. Or, I'm tired of always being compared to their progress. So they acted not from wisdom, but from ego. And you? You were left in pieces, not just because of what they did, but because of why they did it. But here's the truth hiding beneath their heartbreak. Their betrayal was protection in disguise. It might not feel like it right away, but one day you'll see it clearly. That betrayal was a divine filter. It removes someone who could no longer sit at your table without poisoning the food. They were never meant for your next chapter. Their betrayal wasn't your ending. It was an edit. Because sometimes life subtracts not to punish you, but to protect you. So stop obsessing over the why. You may never get the clarity you seek. You may never hear them say, I was wrong. And that's okay. Because as Stoicism reminds us, you don't need their apology to heal. You just need your decision to stop bleeding for people who cut you without remorse. So the next time you start questioning your worth because of what they did, remember this. They didn't betray you because you were weak. They betrayed you because you were getting stronger. There's a moment in every healing journey when you finally understand. You don't need to argue. You don't need to explain. You don't even need closure. You just go quiet. And that silence, it's not weakness. It's not avoidance. It's power. Because when you stop engaging with the chaos, you stop feeding it. Why do narcissists and toxic people fear silence? Because for those who crave control, your silence is the ultimate threat. They feed on reactions, your emotional outbursts, your attempts to defend yourself, your need to be understood. It gives them power. It makes them feel important. But the moment you go quiet, they lose their grip. They can't twist words you never said. They can't control a mind that no longer plays their game. They can't manipulate what they can't even access. That silence, it becomes a mirror, one they can't stand to face. You're no longer filling their emptiness with your energy, no longer covering their dysfunction with your compassion. And suddenly they're alone, alone with themselves. No one left to blame, no one left to provoke, no one left to project onto. It's like standing a narcissist in front of a mirror, but for the first time. Your silence doesn't reflect their fantasy. It reflects truth. And here's the uncomfortable reality. Some people would rather shatter the mirror than face what it reveals. Let's bring it home with a moment you might know all too well. You receive a text full of accusations, or a voice message designed to bait you into defending yourself. Or suddenly, after months of silence, a sweet message from someone who just now seems to remember your worth. And for a moment, you're tempted. You want to reply. You want to explain. You want to be understood. You think of the perfect comeback, the flawless response that would explain, defend, prove your side once and for all. But you don't send it. You set the phone down, you breathe, and you let your silence do the talking. That is growth. That is self-mastery. And they feel it deeply. The Stoic approach is simple: say less, mean more. Epictetus once said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of their significance." In other words, your peace isn't disturbed by what someone says, but by your choice to internalize it. When you respond, you give weight to their words. You acknowledge their chaos. But when you stay silent, you strip away that power. You break the cycle. The Stoics weren't passive. They were precise. They didn't react to everything. They only responded when it aligned with virtue, logic, and inner control. Silence isn't just avoidance. It's a boundary. And here's the truth. Some people don't deserve access to your voice anymore. Not because you're trying to punish them, but because you've finally chosen to protect yourself. Your silence says, "I no longer seek validation from someone who constantly devalues me. I refuse to fight battles that aren't worth winning. I choose my energy over your chaos." That's not cold. That's clarity. So, what happens next? They spiral. Here's what typically unfolds when you go silent with someone manipulative. First, they mock you. "Oh, so you're ignoring me now." Then they poke. "Guess you don't have the courage to face this." Next, they guilt trip. "After everything I did for you." And finally they panic. Because they realize something crucial. They've lost access, not just to you, but to the control they once had over you. That's when the game ends. Not with revenge, not with drama, but with one simple act: your decision to no longer participate in the pain they created. Make no mistake, silence doesn't mean nothing. It means everything. Let's be clear. Going silent doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you've felt too much, and you've chosen something better. You've chosen peace over proving your point. You've stopped searching for justice from people who refuse to live in truth. You're not here to win arguments anymore. You're here to win your life back. So the next time you feel tempted to speak, pause. Before you reply to that message, before you type out that status, before you let your emotions take the wheel, ask yourself, will this restore my peace, or just restart the cycle if it doesn't align with your healing, your values, your emotional intelligence? Let it go. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing at all. They thought they got away with it: the lies, the betrayal, the manipulation. They walked away like nothing happened. Like your pain was just collateral damage. Like your silence meant surrender. But what they forgot is that life always keeps receipts. And karma, she doesn't show up with noise. She doesn't come with fireworks. She arrives quietly but surgically. You won't always see it happen, but you'll feel it in the way their mask starts to slip, In the way the people they manipulated begin to question what they once believed. In the way they slowly begin to live in the very mess they created. And that's the Stoic truth. Karma isn't magic. It's cause and effect. The Stoics didn't believe in fantasy, justice. They believed in natural consequences, that every action plants a seed. And what grows depends on what was planted. Seneca once wrote, "Every guilty person is his own hangman," meaning you don't have to punish anyone. Life already dies when someone lives dishonestly. Eventually, their lies catch up with them. They start believing the fiction they created until it becomes their reality. And when someone betrays the very people who were loyal, they don't just lose a relationship. They build a life where trust becomes impossible. When they treat people's hearts like disposable toys, they may win in the short term, but in the long term, they end up emotionally bankrupt, surrounded by mirrors they can't bear to look into. You'll know karma has arrived not with fireworks, but with fractures. Slow, subtle, inevitable. Their life begins to implode from the inside. Relationships begin to crack, not because of bad luck, but because of bad character. They hop from job to job, friendship to friendship, blaming everyone but themselves. Their own reputation begins to haunt them. The mask they wore for years, it starts slipping and they can't keep it up anymore. And suddenly, they try to come back into your life, because now everyone else finally sees the truth you saw years ago. You'll notice the cracks. You'll feel the collapse, not because you wished them harm, but because they became the architect of their own downfall. Here's a real story, one you might recognize. A narcissist, a man who manipulated his partner for years. He gaslighted her, used triangulation, wrapped cruelty in jokes. But one day she left. No screaming, no chaos, just silence. And in that silence, she built a new life, a life of peace. He laughed. She'll be back, he thought. She always comes back. But this time she didn't. At first, he moved on quickly, posted photos with someone new, pretending he had upgraded. But behind the scenes, everything crumbled. Because he didn't just lose a woman, he lost a mirror. A mirror that once made him feel powerful. And with each attempt to replace her, he began to realize it was never her who was broken. It was always him. Years later, he reached out. A message, an apology, a soft guilt trip wrapped in fake remorse. But by then, her silence wasn't temporary. It had become a permanent boundary. And that was the day karma showed up. Not as revenge, but as her joy, her growth, her peace. Because karma doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need you to watch. It just needs you to let go. You don't need to sit and wait for them to fall. That's not Stoicism, that's ego. True emotional intelligence means you don't chase karma. You trust it. You rise above the obsession with outcomes, and instead focus on what you can control. Your discipline, your boundaries, your self-worth. That's the Stoic shift the moment you go from victim to victor. They thought betrayal would break you. They assumed you'd stay shattered. But what they didn't realize is that Stoic wisdom flips the script. You didn't lose. You gained. Mental clarity, emotional resilience, spiritual strength. You gained the freedom to rebuild without their chaos. And their karma, It's watching you thrive in a life where their manipulation can no longer breathe. Your peace, that's the loudest justice of all. If you asked the Stoics what victory looks like, they would say, your peace is your proof. Your silence is your statement. Your elevation is your answer. You don't have to prove they were wrong. You just have to prove you were always strong. And the moment you stop hoping they suffer is the moment you truly win. Because nothing unsettles a manipulator more than realizing they no longer have the power to disturb you. You owe them nothing. Not a sarcastic comeback. Not a petty social media post. Not even a whispered warning to mutual friends. Nothing. And in that nothing is the most devastating message of all. They no longer matter. That's Stoic philosophy in motion. Indifference is power, not passivity. To an untrained mind, indifference might look like weakness, but to the Stoic, it is the highest form of strength. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Indifference doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've reached clarity. You no longer let yourself be emotionally hijacked by people who thrive in chaos. You see their games. You recognize their manipulation. But you choose consciously not to play. That's not weakness. That's evolution. What getting even actually costs you, let's be honest. The temptation for revenge. It's real. You imagine the moment they finally feel what you felt. You fantasize about saying the perfect words, hitting them where it hurts, serving them the pain they served you cold and calculated. But what do you really get out of it? A momentary high, a quick flush of ego satisfaction, a false sense of justice. And then what? You're back in the mud with them, overthinking, replaying old conversations, explaining yourself to people who never deserved to hear your truth in the first place. The price of revenge, your peace. And that's always too expensive. A real-world story. The woman who said nothing. Let me share a story, one that might feel familiar. A woman discovered her partner had been cheating, not with one person, but with several. Her world shattered overnight. But instead of exploding, she went silent. No dramatic fight, no online smear campaign, no revenge plots. She simply packed her things and walked away. In silence. No posts, no gossip. No attention-seeking exit. 6 months later, she had a new job, a healthier body, a peaceful home, and she had started therapy. Meanwhile, her ex was alone, struggling, trying and failing to explain to others why he lost a good woman. Her silence did more damage than 1,000 angry texts ever could. That is the quiet power of indifference. Why indifference hurts more than anger ever could. You know what drives toxic people crazy? Realizing you don't care. You don't care who they're dating now. You don't check their stories anymore. You don't wonder what if. You don't even hate them. You feel nothing. To someone who once fed on your emotional reactions. Your indifference isn't just rejection, it's erasure. They no longer live rent-free in your mind. And that loss of emotional control, it's the one thing they can never get back. From survival to self-mastery, you used to react because you were hurt, because you didn't understand, because you wanted closure. But now, you don't need their apology. You don't need their side of the story. You don't need them. You've shifted from survival mode to self-mastery, and that means you don't waste time proving they were wrong. You invest time becoming who you were always meant to be. You let your growth be the loudest answer they'll never forget. So if you're ever tempted to get even, ask yourself, will this action heal me, or just feed my ego? If it's for closure, peace, or reclaiming your power, then move quietly. Let it be for you. But if it's just to trigger them, to post for them, to win the breakabouts, sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's not caring if they ever see it. The ultimate Stoic principle: control the inner, release the outer. The Stoics taught us to divide life into two simple categories. What you can control, your choices, your thoughts, your mindset. What you cannot control, how others see you, what they say, what they do. And getting even, that belongs in the second group. Because when you engage with it, you give them emotional access again. And when you give in to the urge to get even, you lose your balance. It pulls you out of alignment with who you've become. But indifference, that belongs entirely to you. It's your power. No one can steal it. And once you truly own it, you become unshakable. Conclusion: your peace is non-negotiable. To them talk. Let them post. Let them pretend they've won. Because when the dust finally settles, when your name fades from their lips, you'll still be here, building, healing, becoming. And them, they'll still be chasing reactions from someone who's already moved far beyond the battlefield. That's Stoic freedom. That's emotional intelligence. That's your new power. They always come back, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually they do. When the silence grows too loud, when their new supply runs dry, when the mask starts slipping and the emptiness inside becomes unbearable, they reach back to the last place they felt in control. You'll get a random message, a like on an old photo, a sudden reminder that they still exist. But here's the shift: you've changed. When you see their name now, you don't feel hate. You don't feel fear. You don't even feel anger. You feel nothing. Why narcissists always circle back? Let's break it down brutally and clearly. Narcissists don't miss you. They miss access to you. They miss your emotional reactions, your validation, your vulnerability. You were a mirror, a reflection that fed their illusion. And when you went silent, that mirror shattered. So when they come back, it's not because they've grown. It's because their latest manipulation failed. And now they remember how easy it used to be. They don't return for love. They return for leverage. The power of non-reactivity. An older version of you trapped in past trauma would have felt triggered. What do they want now? Should I reply, maybe they've changed. But not this version of you. Not the one who's done the inner work. Not the one who rebuilt their worth and forged unbreakable boundaries. You don't need closure. You are the closure. Your silence is now a full sentence. Your peace is the gatekeeper. Stoic principle. The past cannot harm you without your permission. Marcus Aurelius wrote. Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. You're no longer the person they once manipulated. You've upgraded. You've healed. And now you're untouchable to the games that once destroyed you. So when they try to circle back, it's not your job to explain. It's not your job to defend. It's not your job to reopen old wounds. It's your job to stand firm in your peace and say, "This door is no longer yours to knock on." Real story. The silent exit that turned into strength. Let me share a moment that might feel familiar. Sarah was in a toxic relationship for long years. Gaslighting, blame shifting, endless guilt trips. Then came the final blow: infidelity. She walked away. No screaming, no drama, just silence. 6 months. No contact. New habits. New life, new mindset. And then the text arrived. "Hey, just thinking of you. Hope you're okay." The old Sarah might have cried, might have questioned herself, might have replied. But the woman she became, she read it, smiled softly, and deleted it without a second thought. Not out of bitterness, but because she finally understood there's nothing left to return to. That's the quiet strength Stoicism gives you. The power to close the door without needing to slam it. Why they panic? When you don't respond, here's the truth narcissists will never say aloud. They expect you to break. No contact. They expect your silence to be temporary. They expect your pain to pull you back in. They expect guilt to make you explain yourself. They expect the old emotional leash to still work, the same leash they used to tug when they needed validation or control. But when you don't flinch, when your silence holds steady, they panic. Not because they lost you, but because they lost their power over you. They finally realize you've become something they can no longer manipulate. A calm, grounded person, someone with emotional intelligence, with unshakable psychological boundaries. And that realization, it terrifies them, because the version of you they betrayed, the one who tolerated mistreatment, explained too much, forgave too quickly, is gone. Now you value your inner peace more than their approval. You choose spiritual discipline over emotional chaos. And that's growth. That's Stoicism. Understand this deeply. Not every "I'm sorry" deserves a response. Protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. You've reached a place where silence is no longer a tactic, it's a lifestyle. You don't need to punish them. You don't even need to remember them. They'll live with the memory of losing you, while you live with the peace of never needing them again. Letting go isn't weakness, it's mastery. You don't need to hate them. You don't need to win the argument. You don't need to warn the next person. You simply move forward, calm, focused, unshaken. That's how you win. Not by proving your worth to them, but by building a life that's too high for them to ever reach. That's emotional intelligence. That's psychological resilience. That's Stoic self-mastery. You didn't destroy them. You didn't expose them. You didn't even try to get back at them. And yet they're falling apart. It starts small. A few quiet failures, a series of fractured relationships, a reputation that begins to rot from the inside out. They told everyone you were the problem. But now, they can't hold anything together, because the storm, it was never you. The storm was what they were hiding. And now, life is peeling back every layer, one by one. What goes around starts within. Let's make this clear. You don't need to believe in magical karma for reality to do its job. There's something far more powerful: psychological karma. A cause and effect chain that unfolds when someone betrays what is good, loyal, and true when someone lies, manipulates, and uses others for their own gain. They don't just damage relationships. They create a disconnection within themselves. At first, it's invisible, but in time it reveals itself. In the trust they can't seem to keep, in the real relationships they can't maintain, in the inner voice that won't let them rest, in the reputation that quietly follows them into every room they enter. They try to bury their wrongdoings under charm, silence, or distraction. But life has a funny way of collecting unpaid debts. Not always with thunder and flames, sometimes with a slow, suffocating unraveling. The Stoic perspective: you reap what you tolerate. Stoics didn't believe in magic. They believed in natural law, cause and effect rooted deeply in human behavior. Seneca said it best: every guilty person is his own hangman, meaning those who do harm don't escape it. They only delay the collapse. They carry the weight thinking it's hidden. But guilt, shame, fear, these things corrode from the inside out. They erode peace. They sabotage stability. So while you're out there, healing, building, transforming, the still trapped in the maze they created. Real story. The hidden collapse. Let me tell you about a man named David. He cheated on his partner. David cheated multiple times. He gaslight her. He chipped away at her confidence until she couldn't recognize herself. And then he left. Left as if he were breaking free. As if she had been the burden. At first, it looked like he won. New girlfriend, new job, new lifestyle. From the outside, everything looked perfect. But 3 years later, that same girlfriend walked away saying he was emotionally unavailable. His work began to suffer. His performance dropped. Old friends started keeping their distance. Not because of drama, but because of reputation. There was no scandal, no viral moment, just a quiet, undeniable collapse of someone who thought he could outrun his own character. Meanwhile, the woman he betrayed, she had rebuilt her life. She had grown into someone even she barely recognized. And David, he wasn't even a thought in her mind. Because by the time life caught up with him, she was already free. Why you didn't need to interfere where emotional intelligence steps in. You could have exposed them. You could have told the truth to everyone. You could have lit every bridge they tried to cross on fire. But you didn't. Why? Because you realized something life-changing. You don't have to punish the people who hurt you. Life already has that covered. And the more you detached, the more obvious it became who the problem really was. People started to see through their charm. They began noticing the patterns. They started asking the questions you never had to answer. And all the while you stayed silent. You kept growing. You stood still while the chaos chased them. Signs of unraveling behind the scenario may never see their downfall posted online. But here's what it often looks like: vague, passive-aggressive posts about fake people, constant reinvention, new careers, new identities, a revolving door of friend groups, oversharing or total silence. To extremes. Both signs of a fractured identity. Loneliness masked as I'm just focusing on myself. But beneath it all, there's a deep, lingering emptiness, because they gave up something real for ego. And life does not reward that. Your peace was the real payback. Let's be clear, the opposite of revenge isn't forgiveness. It's peace. And peace is loud. It echoes. It shows in your calm, in your grounded presence, in your success without drama, without shouting, without needing to clear your name. That's when it hits them. The truth. They realize they didn't even need me to win. And that, my friend, is a pain they never saw coming. It's not the pain of loss. It's the pain of irrelevance. The pain of watching someone they thought they broke become someone they can no longer reach. The universe isn't blind. It's just patient. The game was never about exposing them. It was about rising so high. They exposed themselves. Your power didn't come from beating them. It came from not letting them change who you are. That's the ultimate reversal. They betrayed you, and you became stronger. They thought you'd collapse, but it's their life that's quietly falling apart. And now, you are free. They are haunted. And you never lifted a finger. They mocked you when you were quiet, dismissed you when you were kind, took you for granted when you were generous. But the one thing they could never steal was your dignity. They may have dirtied your name, but they never touched your character. They may have toyed with your emotions, but they never reached your essence, because dignity isn't something you give away. It's something you reclaim. How dignity is lost and how it's found again. Let's be honest. During the betrayal, in the chaos, in the emotional wreckage, maybe you begged for clarity. Maybe you explained yourself far too much, took the blame that wasn't yours to carry, cried for someone who never deserved even a single tear. It happens. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But here's where transformation begins. When you finally walk away, when you choose silence over chaos, peace over drama, you begin to collect your dignity, piece by piece. Every boundary you enforce, every message you ignore, every time you put yourself first, you rise, not in anger, not in ego, but in stillness, clarity, and deep self-respect. Because dignity is the currency of emotional intelligence. Dignity is what allows you to walk away without setting the world on fire. To let them talk without needing to respond. To be misunderstood and remain completely unmoved. To stay silent when proving your point would cost you your peace. It's not silence for revenge. It's silence for protection. You no longer need to be seen as right. You just need to be at peace. As the Stoics say, self-control is strength, right thought is mastery, calmness is power, and dignity is the container that holds all three. The unshakable self after the storm there is a version of you that emerges after the storm quietly. Stronger, more grounded. Less reactive, more focused. People notice the change. You don't engage in gossip anymore. You don't respond to every provocation. You've become harder to access, not out of bitterness, but because your energy has become sacred. You no longer feel the need to defend your peace, because you've learned you don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing yourself. You stopped performing. You stopped over-explaining. And you started living from a place of deep, quiet self-trust. That's what makes you unforgettable. Not how loudly you screamed, but how gracefully you rebuilt. Real moment. The dignified Exeter man named Elijah once shared his story. He worked in a toxic environment, gaslight, undermined, excluded from key decisions. He tried to speak up, tried to be a team player, tried to earn fairness. But one day, he realized something. He wasn't being treated poorly because he lacked value. He was being treated poorly because his integrity made others feel exposed. Threatened. So, Elijah did the most powerful thing he could do. He walked away. No drama, no grand exit, just a letter of resignation and quiet freedom. 6 months later, the department fell apart. Clients left. Turnover skyrocketed. But Elijah, he was thriving in a new role with people who valued his presence. But more importantly, he had learned to value himself again. That's the power of a dignified walk away. They can regret it, but they can't return. They lost access to your essence. There comes a moment when the ones who betrayed you realize what they've truly lost. Not just your time, not just your attention. They lost access to your essence. They remember how you listened without judgment, how you gave without keeping score, how you stayed loyal long after they stopped deserving it. But that version of you is gone. You didn't become cold. You became clear. You didn't harden your heart. You elevated your standards. And even if they apologize, even if they beg, they don't get the same you back. Because the version they betrayed no longer exists. What they can never take. Let's end with this truth. They may have taken your time. They may have wasted your love. They may have disrespected your trust. But they never took your soul. They never took your growth. They never took your ability to rise, to rebuild, to walk through fire and come out stronger. And that's what they regret the most. Not that you left, but that they can never come back. Because there comes a moment in every betrayal story when the tables turn. Not with some loud confrontation, not with screenshots, receipts, or public rants. But with your absence, with your peace, with your quiet, steady rise. That's when it finally hits them. They didn't just walk away from you. They walked away from someone they will never be able to reach again. And suddenly your existence becomes a mirror, a reflection of everything they lost, everything they wasted, everything they never appreciated when they had the chance. But you didn't try to teach them a lesson. You didn't scold them. You didn't send long texts or moral lectures. You let life do the teaching. You let silence say the things words never could. You let your elevation be louder than anything you could have. SAIDTHAT's the beauty of emotional intelligence. You don't respond to wounds from the same place where they were created. You rise, and you let your new reality speak for itself. And that new reality, no shouting, no drama, no access, no entry into your peace. That hurts them far more than any revenge ever could. Your growth becomes their reflection, the same person they once mocked for being too sensitive now has boundaries stronger than they could ever imagine. The same person they dismissed now walks with calm confidence, quiet direction, and a sense of purpose. The same soul they tried to break is now surrounded by respect, alignment, and inner strength. And all they can do is watch from the sidelines they built for themselves. Because when you outgrow the people who betrayed you, you don't need to punish them. You become the punishment. Real example. She was the lesson. Let's talk about Sarah. Her ex belittled her constantly, mocked her dreams, made her feel replaceable. Every chance he got, he chipped away at her confidence. And when she finally left, he thought she'd return, like always. But this time she didn't. He watched from a distance as she built her business, transformed her body, healed her spirit, and years later she didn't even hate him. She didn't need to, because she wasn't the same woman anymore. He once saw her as weak. Now he couldn't even face her, not because she threatened him, but because her presence forced him to confront everything he threw away. That's the power of becoming the lesson. You don't need closure when you already have clarity. So many people wait for the last conversation, the apology, the explanation. But here's the truth. Closure isn't something they give you. It's something you give yourself. And that clarity, it comes when you stop needing them to understand. It arrives when you stop chasing validation. It blooms when you finally choose peace over being right. Because when your life improves in silence, they feel every step. Even if they never hear your footsteps again, their guilt becomes their sentence. They may laugh in public, but they grieve in private, not necessarily over you, but over what they've become. Because when someone betrays a good soul, they don't just lose a relationship. They lose the version of themselves that once had access to something real. To something rare, to something they will never hold again. You were the chapter they closed too soon, the opportunity they misread, the blessing they mishandled. And now you're gone. Not because you hated them, but because you finally loved yourself more. And what they feel now, it's not just regret, it's jealousy. Not the loud, angry kind, but the quiet ache of shame. Because now, you are the reminder. Every time they meet someone who even slightly resembles your kindness, they flinch. Every time they try to recreate what you once gave so effortlessly, they fail. Because you weren't just a phase. You were a mirror, a test, a standard they weren't ready to rise to. And now your very existence reminds them of everything they still haven't healed within themselves. You've become the reminder they can't mute. And your silence, it's the loudest sound in the room. Let's close this chapter with a truth they'll never say out loud. I thought I'd moved on, but they're still living in my head, and I'm not even in theirs. You didn't win by being louder. You didn't win by being cruel. You won by being unbothered, by letting go, by healing harder than they ever hurt you. You are no longer just the one that got away. You've become the one they'll never get over. They thought leaving you would elevate them, that discarding you would make them shine. But life doesn't reward betrayal. Life responds to energy, and energy doesn't lie. The echo of their choices. You'll hear people say, they're living their best life after hurting me, and maybe, for a while, it looks that way. Smiling, posting, thriving on the surface. But time reveals everything. Because betrayal isn't just a moral mistake. It's a spiritual fracture. You don't get to violate someone's trust, manipulate their heart, and walk away clean, even if no one sees it, even if no one says anything. Life remembers, and the bill, it always comes due. You don't chase just a sale. Become it. As you rise, as you build a life of peace, purpose, and power, you no longer need revenge. Because your transformation is the justice. The discipline you've developed, the boundaries you enforce, the self-worth you've reclaimed, the empire you've built quietly, patiently. All of it becomes a mirror. And that mirror, it haunts them. Because it reflects not only what they lost, but who they never had the courage to become. You became the very thing they never imagined. Free. Stoic justice. Rooted in inner power. Stoic philosophy doesn't preach revenge. It doesn't celebrate petty victories. It teaches order, character, and the long game. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." So, you don't react, you don't retaliate, you rise, because true power is found in self-mastery. And when they watch you glow in silence, elevate without noise, and become immune to their chaos, that is the loss they will never recover from. True story. When karma doesn't look like punishment, let me tell you about Eleanor. She was with her fiancé for 6 years. He cheated, lied, ghosted her without a word. For months, she waited for justice, for karma, for closure. And nothing came. Until one day she stopped checking. She stopped hoping for karma. And she started focusing on herself. She got back in shape, started a non-profit, found love again, but not from someone else, from her own soul. Years later, she bumped into him. He had gained weight, looked tired, was stuck in a dead-end job. He smiled awkwardly. She didn't. He said, "I always knew you'd be successful." She simply nodded and walked away. That was karma. Not because he suffered, but because she had risen so far he no longer recognized the woman he once destroyed. The ultimate loss? Irrelevance. No, when you remove the audience, manipulators lose their identity. When you take away control, they lose their power. And when you stop reacting, they lose their relevance. Because the moment you become irrelevant to a manipulator, their world begins to shrink. They don't survive on peace. They thrive on chaos. They feed off your confusion, your triggers, your reactivity. Take that away, and they vanish. Not physically, but spiritually, emotionally. They're still alive, just no longer alive in your world. And that's what they never saw coming. You closed the door without saying a single word. You didn't announce your growth. You didn't perform your healing. You just became unreachable, emotionally, energetically, philosophically. And as they scroll through your life in silence, they realize something devastating. You became untouchable, not because they couldn't reach you, but because you no longer looked back. That is the ultimate power. Your rise was never about spite. It was always about self-respect. Let's be clear, your growth wasn't fueled by hatred. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about finally seeing yourself as enough and building a life from that clarity. You didn't rise to punish them. You rose because you refused to stay low just to be loved. And that, in itself, is divine justice. Final thought. On day they'll say, "I should have treated them better." But by then you'll be so far gone in peace, in purpose, in your new life that their words won't even echo anymore. You won't need closure. You won't need revenge. You won't need justice, because you became all three. You didn't chase vengeance. You chose peace. You didn't collapse. You became a storm in silence. And now they remember you, not because you're loud, but because your absence echoes louder than your presence ever did. You're no longer the broken one. You are the warning dot to everyone watching. If someone betrayed you, used you, discarded you like you didn't matter, let this be your turning point. Don't seek revenge. Don't fight to prove yourself. Become the person they never imagined you could be. Become untouchable, unbothered, unapologetically whole. Because in the end, nothing ruins a betrayer's life more than watching you thrive without them and knowing they're no longer part of the story they thought they controlled. Now it's your voice that matters. What was your strongest move in ensuring a toxic person never returned to your life? Was it a boundary you held? A moment of silence that said everything? A mindset shift that turned your pain into power? Share your wisdom in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to reclaim their strength today. And if this message spoke to your soul, like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this. And subscribe to Stoic Capsule, where silence becomes strength and healing becomes legendary. This isn't just another video, this is your new beginning.